All right, ready?
Go for it.
And action.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you guys for showing up. Um, so thank you for doing our second episode. This one we're going to kind of focus more on the production side of visual effects and like some of the issues and current events that are going on the production side. And so I did this last time where I tried to go on people's LinkedIn's and find out, like, kind of come up with some introductions for all you guys, but they're a little too vast. Like, you guys have a lot of experience, have done a lot, so I'm gonna put that task on you guys to go over, to introduce yourself. Who wants to start?
I guess
Leslie's gonna start.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I'm Leslie Chung, a visual effects supervisor. I come from Crafty Apes, the occasionally a show side production VFX supervisor as well. And I've been in the industry for, I think, almost a little over 15 years now. It's been a long run.
Yeah.
Just hit 40, so it's been an old
Congratulations. When was your birthday?
yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good time. Okay.
Yep.
Joy.
My name is Joy Amani. I'm a visual effects supervisor and producer.
Mhm.
I started out on the vendor side in the mid 90s as an intern, junior animator, studio supervisor. And about 2000, I went to client side. 2011, I went to client. 2009, I went to client side. And I've been supervising production side since 2011.
Nice.
I'm Parker Chiak. I'm a New York-based VFX producer, mostly client-side, actually exclusively client-side. And I've been doing it for 18 years now.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna start with my questions on my phone. So there's been a few features mostly that came out, Everything Everywhere All at Once and Godzilla recently, where they kind of talk about how they've used these kind of smallish in-house teams to do a lot of their VFX work. And there's some conversation around that, like how that might be something that's happening in visual effects going forward, right? Do you guys feel like that is something that's going to be more and more prevalent on the production side? And do you think that that's going to kind of eke into the vendor model? Versus, like, basically, are we going to move more towards having these small in-house teams that are going to do a lot of work versus kind of the vendor model that happens now where you have a lot of bigger vendors doing work?
I personally don't think so. We've been
don't?
trying that for well over 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is getting all the right people.
Yeah.
And that's always difficult because if somebody is freelance, they're going to be working on some other show.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a dream team, then it's possible. Then it also depends on the complexities of the show. Because an in-house team is not going to have the wherewithal of a big studio that's got render farms and whatnot. So there are complications, but if it's something that you can manage yourself and you have the right people, yes. But that's rare.
Yeah.
So I know they keep pointing to Godzilla right now, but that's so rare to find somebody who can pull in a team and manage it. It's just not viable, that I see it becoming a change in how it is.
Do you guys?
I agree. I mean, I think one of the most unique things too about those two specific productions is that the VFX supervisor was also the director, or at least was very, very close to it. Like in the case of Everything Everywhere All at Once, that director was also doing shots and supervising them and approving them. Same with Godzilla -1. It's a very romantic notion, I think, to have like a team like that and successfully make beautiful looking VFX that way. But your decision-making process is extremely more streamlined in that the director has so much more skin in the game into how long the VFX is taking and the direct consequences of changes and revisions there. And as Joy said, it takes such a hard effort to get your dream team to be all in one place and have all the hardware and backup in order to do that at such a fast pace. I don't think it's going to change the model.
Yeah.
And they also have luxury of time that we don't on regular films features, right? So that's another aspect of it, and then also studio wanting to have their notes. If you have your own in-house team, you're not going to get the turnaround that you will out of a big studio.
Right. So, do you guys think that that there's kind of technology plays into it, like like if technology keeps improving, if like processing speeds keep improving, render farm demands keep coming down, AI, do you guys think that will change anything?
I think you have cloud-based setups now where I can hire an artist and they'll have access to a render farm, they'll have access to the software,
Yeah.
which is very helpful. But I agree. I think that it's not something that will take over.
Yeah, like
by
we're
any means.
already there in a sense in terms of there's not
Yeah.
really a problem with hardware.
And there's a studio needing to approve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just run a cloud by yourself. You
Mhm.
need to get that vetted.
So it's kind
Also, those teams were all in-house too. Like they were all physically
They're
together. So
physically
even though you had the backup of what people would assume is a remote situation that's easily scalable, they were still all physically together, literally working all hours of the day together, which is what does facilitate a fast creative process.
right. Okay. So what makes a good vendor, in your opinion? When you work with when you work with vendors, what are you looking for that kind of makes your experience good versus bad? What are the pain points? How do you feel about it? And we're
Go
all
first. You guys have
Yeah,
more
that's probably a
experience
bit-
talking to
yeah.
vendors
I
than
think-
I do.
I think absolutely the most important thing is the team that you have from any vendor. It's all about relationship, in my opinion. You know, that you can have a huge name vendor and a team that you don't get along with, and that's not going to get you where you want to be. And the opposite is true.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking for the people who, jibe with me, jibe with our supervisors, jibe with our director, that everybody's on the same page. And we're all kind of in it to win it together. I think the other thing that I find as a pain point is this tendency to underbid and then end up with just rollouts of COs. And that is the thing that will just nibble away at everything all the way through and just create headaches for everybody.
So you look for like honesty in bids, kind of like you want the real number.
I do. Yeah.
For me, I think it's two things I look for. The primary one is financial viability. That's a big deal for me. I check to see not just if they're on the ropes, but if they got something bigger in there. The last thing I want is to go in there and find out I've got the D team because A has gone somewhere else. So I'm going to look into seeing what they have, two, how financially viable they are. I'm going to make some phone calls to see how they were on the last couple of shows.
Okay.
If I'm working with somebody new, because the worst thing that can happen is you're halfway into production and then it's just crickets from the other side because they've dissolved the team or people have moved over.
Financial viability as in like how resource and like what are their resources? Are they able to take on like
That's right.
what they're promising?
Yeah, and sometimes what will happen is you might have paid fair market, but they might have gotten burnt on another project. And so then they end up having to move crew out of what you asked for. And that's happened before, and that's not a good place to be. And communication is very important, because the last thing I want to do is if you're on a 1,000, 2,000 shot thing where I'm making annotated notes for every single shot. And what should be is, do they have a good supervisor on the other side where I can just do the annotation on the key shots and then they can self-manage themselves, right? Rather than wait 6 weeks and get something. This is nothing like we asked for, and we got 3 weeks left on the clock to fix it.
Leslie, do you want to add like the other side? Because you're probably more like vendor side on this particular point, right?
Majority of my history is vendor side, but I've also done the other side as well. And for me, looking from both sides, I think the biggest thing I look for is my relationship with the supervisor and the producer, or their reputation if I haven't worked with them before. So I'll do like a pretty fairly thorough, I like to think, background check on them, because to me it's, regardless of like the company reputation, which is always important, it's also down to whether or not I'm getting the A, B, or C team and what the relationship is between the supervisor and the producer. I love supervisors who can self-manage, but I would prefer a team that's co-collaborative between the producer and supervisor, because then I fully believe then I get the best of the technical and the production side of that work. Because both sides are equally important, and when I've been show side, I've watched as one or the other can misstep, and that affects the entire team and the quality of the project as well.
So it's really just like a communication seems to be like the theme that you guys really lean into pretty hard. Like you want really good communication.
And open and transparent communication. I
Yeah,
feel
that's
Yeah.
like
another thing.
one thing that for a long time I was stuck in was sort of black boxing the vendors.
Mhm.
And I don't like doing that anymore. I like, here's where we are, straight up, no.
Just honesty. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
and
like
I think
exactly
that
what's going on.
really builds that trust and that sort of collaboration.
Nice.
I think it also prevents too from, you could argue that you can prevent like vendors from maybe going too much into the red on something, but that also affects, I think, you show side as well. If you can pivot and collaborate together, if things are going sideways, you can help manage the creative or help like work with like the post team a little bit more
Mhm.
to navigate like a better compromise for both sides.
Yeah. What do you guys think drives the black boxing? Like, what kind of deteriorates communication usually? You think? Like, what are the anxieties that kind of breaks down communication and?
I think it's an elitism, to be honest. I think it's sort of this
Mhm.
view that the vendor works for me, they'll do my thing, and that's it. And then I don't think that's true. I think it's a collaboration. It always has to be. And otherwise, you're just, these aren't people in a room that are making, widgets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These are artists that are working on the project that we all care about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite clients that I've tried to model myself after when I've had the privilege of being the client are the ones who have always made themselves very available to show check-ins, like regular conversations, to just talk about the temperature read of a show. And between like just all meetings in general, be it with, my artist team or my producing team or, my vendor team, I find that just prompting some kind of a conversation as opposed to even just an email of like, hey, is everything okay? Everyone almost always says, it's fine. I like to
Yeah.
really get in there and be like, hey, let's sit face to face or, screen to screen
Mm-hmm.
and let's talk about the way it's going so that that stuff just comes out. I guess I like to think of it as
Yeah.
almost like a
Fine is a
therapy,
very
like a
sticky word.
VFX therapy session.
Yeah,
Like, let's
exactly.
let's talk about it. Is it going to come out? What's going good? I'd love to know what's going good too.
Yeah.
Because I think there's always more to talk about that can help aid the creative process and get us there on time and hopefully without losing any hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to see work in progress next looks,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure it's not coming off the rails.
Okay.
Because when you're on a schedule, the last thing you want is 2 weeks out to find out it just went somewhere else.
Yeah, and that also kind of plays into communication, but like I guess on like a pipeline level where you actually have the ability to really
Yeah.
send like kind of works
Well,
in
and
progress.
constant deliveries of work in progress too. I
Yeah.
think some artists even and some vendors will just keep things for a little bit too long, and you watch the temp deadline pass, and you watch like the deadline go like neither side can be inactive or hoarding shots. I think.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one spicy question that I'm allowed per per episode, which is it's a union question, but it's not like pro or anti-union. Like that's not what I'm asking. It's more so there's a conversation around like a VFX union and everything. Do you guys are you guys planning for that in any way? Are you kind of contemplating like if there was a union, how is that going to change my work or kind of how I do the job? Is any of that going on your end at all?
Not for me.
Not for you.
I don't think it's realistic.
The union itself, or yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys don't really have like a
Well,
concern.
also, visual effects isn't a monolithic industry like scenic or something else.
Yeah.
Because for Parker and me on the client side, the conditions are very different than being on the vendor side.
Yeah.
Then you got various departments that have different needs. Then you got the whole international aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, parts of us can be absorbed, I think, into other unions. And I really think visual effects supervisors should be going into a union like where the DPs are,
Oh, okay, that's good.
right?
Yeah.
Or on camera or something like. I mean, we do a lot of it,
Yeah.
so I don't see any reason we aren't in there. So I think it's more of an absorption into other unions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think client side is where I could see unions working out best, even in post as well. Like as when on set, probably the same way DPs or even like production designers and art directors would work out, and then in post, similar to I think the way editors are set up. But when it comes to vendors, I'm full of questions and optimistic observation to see how that'll work out. But
Yeah.
I too find it difficult to imagine how that would really play out in an ideal way as opposed to say on set and client side on post.
And it is because of it's just too dispersed in a way. The way it works is too global. There's not enough solidarity between vendors the way it is right now, and things like that, right?
And visual effects came to play after the industry went global, which makes it a lot harder to
Yeah.
unionize, right?
Yeah. No, I agree, because it's also digital. Digital is like, it's such an ephemeral thing. Like, how do you really lock it into a country or any kind of municipality? Well, municipality, if you want to call a country that. Parker, do you want to say?
Well, I would say that what we're seeing, my understanding of what we're seeing is that you're seeing collectives happening within various vendors, and I don't see those collectives expanding beyond that and coming together into one single union. But I do think that, you know, if a facility has an internal union, a collective union within itself, that offers opportunity for, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's not something that would affect me necessarily, other than the
sure.
happiness of the
crew.
the team there. Yeah, and that they're protected. I know they're protected, so that if there are times when in my role, I might ask for something that turns out to be exploitive. I don't know it at that time, and if I don't have the communication, then I don't know that I'm doing it. But if there's some kind of protections for them outside of, within themselves, rather than the producer saying, this has to be done this way, that has to be done this way, I think that's really, it makes me feel better, if that makes sense.
That's cool. There's a lot of, obviously, uncertainty kind of in the industry right now. There's things are changing, shifting around. So my kind of where this question came from for me was, if you had $1 million, if someone gave you $1 million, where would you invest it in visual effects? Meaning that where is there a path where you think there's growth in this industry? It's not specifically a production question, it's just kind of a broader question.
I'd put it into logistics, because I feel massive. It's a low margin work, because we spend a lot of time trying to organize information and data and make sure all the relevant information is in front of the right people. There's massive wastage that we can use AI to clean up. That's going to make it a more profitable business and viable one.
Yeah, just streamlining.
Yeah. I mean, already with Gaussian splatting and nerves, we're looking at possibly getting layout and 3D tracking done pretty much real time.
Yeah.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So
Frame.io is like kind of came out with their new stuff where they essentially just announced that they're going to do much more hardcore metadata than they were before.
Yeah.
Which is in that vein. It's kind of, that's a company that's pretty much straightforward doing that. They're working on the logistics of the whole thing.
And set up right now on the vendor side, which Leslie can probably confirm better, it's a big deal. Like all of this information gets ingested, and it's about a third of the time goes into just getting it all up and running, right?
Yeah. It takes days.
Yeah, or weeks sometimes. But all of that could be pretty much real time right now. So.
Okay. Parker, you wanted to add something?
I mean, there's a couple, I don't know, I've thought about this a lot. I can come up with a million ways to spend $1 million in this industry, but I think that pipeline enhancements with AI are really valuable, at least from my perspective, because the work will happen faster. Render farms, hitting, much faster, rendering out sims in a day rather than a week, things like that are a big deal. And then the other answer that I liked, that I'm not sure is a good one, but I feel like some of the international markets, international areas of vendors that we've seen are starting to come to maturity. And there are some vendors in India that are just like right on the cusp of doing work that is, as good as anything in North America. And given the difference in price point, I think that that's a really interesting place to kind of nurture.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like, is there a big logistical barrier between being international, right? So like is it easier to work inside of North America, or is it just the same if you're in like 3 other places working at the same time?
Some ways I'd argue working with somebody across the planet's easier.
Yeah.
because by the time you come in the morning, it's ready. They've been working your entire night.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a bad. So I'm ambivalent where they are.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. The
I think the only hiccup there is communication.
Yeah,
That it's
com is the hardest
yeah.
part. And again, when working with countries like India, and to Parker's point, they're on the cusp. But what's keeping them from breaching that is having context of how people live and exist here. Not unlike my same issue with AI, is that how people live culturally is so different in India. Like, so when you communicate and you ask for something, it can be contextually interpreted multiple different ways. So that's a complication. So they need to breach that, and then they're on a level playing field.
you're saying almost having like an AI assisted translation
No,
of sort, or
no,
like a
they need to be living.
much deeper. Yeah.
The shows are Western. People in the West live differently. So that's just not how the vast majority of people in India live.
Yeah.
Neither is their communication or the language. They speak English, but contextually it's different. Right. So that's the communication being the biggest problem right now.
So how do you surmount that?
Huh?
How do you surmount that?
It's painful. So the way to do that is for an Indian company to have a Western team that you percolate through and have them break it down. But dealing directly with an Indian company is difficult. I basically have to annotate every single frame, and that's
Oh
painful.
wow. Yeah. Okay. Speaking, so one of my questions is around AI, but we're already kind of in that conversation. So what do you guys think of where's the AI going to play into all of this? Because we were talking just a second ago, we were talking about how there's you're seeing things like Sora, right? And you're kind of like you're seeing some really nice images, but there's like these contextual problems, there's editorial problems. How do you control any of it? So where do you guys imagine it all settling? Like what's AI going to actually be in production or in the industry, 1 or 2 or 3 years down the line? Because I can't imagine it's going to be like final frames. Like I just don't see it happening. But or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys disagree. Like
For one, I am pretty certain when we get back in earnest, back to work after whatever's going on right now, we are going to get directives from the studio saying what we can do and what we can't do with AI, because it is a huge, huge pressing legal minefield. Okay, so even if I use an element that I created in Midjourney or some gen software and put it in a matte painting, could I get sued for it? We don't know. It's in a gray area. So I'm certain that's going to come with whatever contract we get down the road, that we can't use any AI in the near future, like AI created imagery, until there's legal clarity. That said, I feel there's going to be a lot of it in storyboarding concept where it should be. It's great for doing that.
it's interesting because like I think like 10, 15 years ago, the term was visual development that was brought up, and it essentially describes what you just described, which is that we're going to have this stage kind of really early in development where AI is probably going to be able to produce a lot of just visual concept and lock it in, as much as possible, obviously. What do you guys, Lizzie, what do you think?
I think AI is going to be able to help with a lot of supporting VFX work. I mean, your paint work, your replacement work, like face replacement, logo replacement, just anything that helps allow for seamless VFX, and I do think that's a really good thing, because at least as far as like shows and the work for like a supervisor or a comp soup or an artist, even your work is now super powered to just be a little bit faster and a little bit more accurate. So your notes now suddenly become almost on a more creative playing field, as opposed to just trying to reach the base level of photorealism and the base level of likeness.
Do you is that do you guys do that now, or like do you see that happening now where people are using kind of AI for roto or anything like that?
I fully believe there's a fair amount of vendors already using AI for roto work. I think there are a number of vendors, and teams that I've been working on have also been developing AI tools and AI methodologies to better enhance our paint capabilities and face replacement work which is still a normal ask for any VFX company, but the results are certainly are cheaper and faster. And I'm finding that my notes are ending up, as I said, less on struggling to figure out, say, like why a face replacement isn't quite sitting in, and really dialing in the fine details of a really, really good likeness already and getting like slightly helpful, like that last 10% in there through communicative notes, as opposed to like having to start at the bottom at like 20 and 30% of like base notes. So it's in development. It's definitely successful and working, but all of it still requires a lot of money for the technical aspect of it, a lot of development. You still need like a team of programmers to help support your pipeline in order to make anything like, say, Stable Diffusion or any of the other AI tools work in a secure manner. And then you still at the end need, I mean, you could argue that you can support your senior artists now with a team of maybe juniors and mids to help run it through, but you still need some very, very, very talented senior artists, which nobody ever seems to have, to do the initial part. And even then, I found that the work that I've been doing still almost gets bottlenecked and needing a very, very specialized and skilled senior artist to implement the AI work, to develop the AI work and then also implement it in comp.
Yeah, the way my experience with using AI has been where you can get kind of a really good 80%, but then it won't give you 20%. That's completely just on you, and it's all manual, and sometimes manual in the worst way, where you're literally just doing hard paint or things like
So
that.
you still need your very, very
Yeah,
skilled
and
senior
that's
artists
actually a
to
higher
do
skill level,
Yeah.
which is less available a lot of times. So it's kind of this weird situation where like it it gets you somewhere faster, but then you have this other requirement that occurs where you need even actually higher skill level artists to still work on it. Pardon, did you want to ask something?
I mean, I don't know.
That's a good answer. That's actually
yeah,
a good answer. Like,
there isn't a clear answer. I think that one thing that I see AI as a tool. Everyone's doom and gloom about
Yeah.
this, and it's
Right.
just a tool. It's
It's
just another
just
thing in our bag that we use to
Yeah.
do all sorts of things.
Mhm.
I think what's really valuable though is being able to quickly generate imagery. And we're a visual medium. Directors are visual people, and to be able to show them 20 different things and say, I like that one the best. Can we do some other stuff to it? Is really helpful. But that other stuff that we have to do is human done.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a starting point.
Yeah.
It's a
Like
starting
a creative
point when it
scratch
comes.
pad.
Yeah.
Like
also we
That's
need
right.
to get
Exactly.
very specific about what AI. There are many kinds of AI.
Right.
There is machine learning, which is pretty much what roto, paint, tracking, which doesn't have a copyright issue.
It's a research. That's a research science.
That's
Yeah.
basically service. Traditionally used to be visual effects service jobs that went overseas.
Mhm.
Those are definitely going to be under threat because those
Yeah.
easily can be done with a machine learning AI system.
Right.
Now the generative AI, now that's the gray area. I personally wouldn't allow any of it to hit final picture, but I certainly would use it for storyboarding and concepting.
Mhm.
And then you got AGI, which isn't here yet, artificial general intelligence,
Right.
which is more autonomous.
Are you guys going to kind of try to contractually enforce vendors to not use AI?
We will
out of
have
the out of the fear that like, what if they, just like,
that directive will come to us from the studio.
Yeah. Exactly.
you, okay. Yeah. The other, so there's AI and there's all that stuff, but there's also kind of developments in cloud, which is kind of under the rug a little bit. But we were talking a second ago, about Frame.io, which is essentially this completely cloud-based platform. They're trying to sell you on like doing remote resolve sessions. We're literally in a color suite right now, and they're kind of banking a lot on this stuff happening remotely over cloud. If you ever look at like AWS or Google Cloud, they have a lot of offerings now for graphics workstations on their platforms. Do you guys, is there a preference for things to be in studio on premise? Or do you guys think that there's like, that's just an open door, like you can totally go cloud? What do you guys think?
Personal for me,
Yeah.
and I certainly feel remote's going to be more attractive to mid to low.
Mm-hmm.
because that makes sense, because you're not bringing people in and housing them.
Mhm.
So there's a ton of reasons why you could do that.
Mhm.
But if you've got the money in the mid to high, especially after COVID, people have a preference to get back in the room together, because
Mhm.
there is a different energy in the creation process when people are in the same room.
Mhm. What would you classify mid to high? Like what is it?
Budget.
But like what kind of work sits in like the mid to high? Like is it more creative work, or is it like would really complicated paint work that's high budget, would that also count?
It's not specifically
The
the
kind.
visual effects budget, it's just the budget of the show.
The show itself.
What,
Okay,
what
cool.
can the show support housing and bringing all these people together, right? So
I think some of my favorite shows, and I think some of the more creatively successful shows, they all happened in person,
Yeah.
and that also included like the entire post team, down from the editors, the showrunner, even the visual effects supervisor and producers there. Like it,
Mhm.
creative solutions were found through sheer just closeness
Mhm.
and being able to have that quick back and forth and quick absorption of the history of building a shot or a scene together.
Mhm.
And I do think there's something lost in the full remote process. That's not to say vendors can't be remote, but even then, depending on like the creative needs of a show, there are places that are still asking for in-house teams just to be able to manage the creative like pace and workload a lot more successfully.
Mhm.
I'm on
You
the
have a
fence on this one. I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I also feel like there's a quality of life issue
Mhm.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
that
oh yeah, for sure.
remote provides. That
No,
you
I'm
know,
addicted for sure.
if you're
I get, yeah, like I kind of, well, when I went remote, like there's so many things that improved in my life in like a very meaningful way,
yeah.
that like I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know,
But it
man.
also depends on the type of job you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
though.
we're also talking vendor side versus
Yeah,
Client
yeah.
side,
client
yeah.
side. Client side, I feel a hybrid is fine too, but you need to be in the same room. Because one of the things I realized during COVID is how much I'm reading body language
Yeah.
by having a human being in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
That we subconsciously don't think about it, but it's a big deal.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Or
But that
even
being
just
said,
hearing hallway talk and having the little
Exactly.
flags.
Or even the
That relates to me. That
tone.
relates to me. Yeah.
But that being said, I think the hybrid situation for what we're describing as well is absolutely necessary because we
Yeah,
are working long
that's right.
hours.
Yeah.
And because also the creatives that we're working with are also going to be doing lots of like amazing things all over the world at different times. So it while I wouldn't say like a 100% like in-house mandate is needed, or it's definitely not something I prefer.
Yeah.
I can see the value of both sides, and like having that hybrid collaboration works amazingly well. And it also depends on the team and the chemistry and communication. For an artist, it's very different, I think, in terms of being in house or not. But even then, as a supervisor vendor side, who's very well acquainted with my teams, I've watched a drop in efficiency in artists. But of course, they'll never admit to that because
Right.
when artists talk about it, they're speaking from the eye perspective. It's my quality of life is much better. My commute time is different. I can go and pop in, the laundry while waiting for a render for 15 minutes. And I love that too. I do the same as well.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the efficiency of a show, it takes a very disciplined kind of person to be able to fully succeed in true efficiency and communication for this kind of work.
Do you see people that do actually improve in performance?
There are some who are very much improved, and there are some who are not. But I don't think you're going to really find a true statement for that from most artists that you talk to,
Yeah.
or even producers. Like it's just the entire team. It's a very subjective conversation when speaking directly to them, as opposed to say maybe their managing person.
And mid and junior, I certainly think benefits from in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember that.
There's no question
Senior,
of that.
they could be sitting on the surface of the moon.
Yeah. That is.
And at that level, if you're a senior, whether you're a visual effects supervisor or an artist, it actually benefits you to remove yourself from the tech and engage in the real world, because that's what your job is, to bring the outside world onto screen. So unless you sit and you see clouds moving through a mountain, you can't bring it to a screen realistically.
Yeah.
So at that point, traveling and engaging with the real life is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the last episode we had the same conversation. So the last episode was more just artists, and what they brought up was that how do you train juniors if there's no seniors around to train them?
That's right.
And like, so how do you replenish that? How do you keep the cycle going, really?
Yeah, and that right now is my biggest concern, is sort of the death of journeymanship, which is really vital for the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It
the
is a
development of
craft.
soft skills too. Like I think people forget that just because you can make beautiful pictures and be an amazing programmer at behind your desk, there's still the communicative process because all this work takes a village. And the more that we are behind closed doors in an individual situation, the more the communication skills tend to ebb and sit at a loss.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we were talking to VES about doing the show, their kind of conception was that we would do this all over Zoom, and we actually had to kind of like fight them a little bit on doing this in person. And this kind of comes to that point where like it kind of just sucks if it's over Zoom.
Yeah.
It's not the same
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, this is very different.
Yeah, it's just
right
such
now.
I'm
it's,
present right now.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's such a different thing, and there's a quality that's lost because you see so many things that went to Zoom, and it's just not the same, and you kind of just zone out from it so much. So yeah, and that's how we're gonna end it. Thank you so much. So that was the last question, and
Yeah.
you
Back
guys
to our
are-
computer screens,
Yeah,
our
back to our
individual
computers.
homes.